Liz Larson.
And I'm Bill McKenna.
And together, we created the Cogno Movement System. And we'd like to welcome you to the New Life Perspectives radio show,
where we're going to be sharing with you tools, tips, and ideas that are going to change your life.
Hello, hello in UK Health Radio Land. I'm Liz Larson, and I'm here with my friend,
Bill McKenna.
Hey, Bill McKenna. And we are the team that hosts the New Life Perspectives radio show here on the UK Health Radio Network. And we're also the team that created the Cogno Movement System. And today, it's our great honor to welcome a good friend of ours, Natasha Sankovic. And Natasha is a belly dancer, professional belly dancer, and energy healer, and filmmaker. And what else, Natasha?
Well, I also do interviews. So I do online shows, which you two have been so kind and wonderful to be a part of now and again. And and I love dance. I love yoga. I'm also a yoga instructor, Pilates instructor. I mean, all sorts of stuff. But at the core, I'm a person that loves working with energy, working with the body to make our lives and realities so much better.
Yeah, energy healer extraordinaire. It's like the whole package, all of the things, which is so fascinating because so many of us have these pretty interesting backgrounds. Natasha and I were chatting one day about something that Bill was working on with Cogno Movement. You know, it's movement and cognitive changes happen because of it. And he was working on moving the hips. And Natasha is a belly dancer. So we started this conversation about belly dancing and energy healing work. So tell us a little bit about belly dancing. How did you start in it? What are its origins? And why is it a tool for energy healing?
Okay. So I started a long time ago. I was maybe 19 or something. I was a teenager. And it was something I gravitated to. It wasn't something that anybody in my family did or anybody in my neighborhood did. I was at some kind of a meeting. There was a speaker, and this woman was talking about how she worked with a drummer in this performance, and how at one point in time she synced her movements to the drum, and it was almost a transcendent experience for her. And I was so very intrigued. I was like, what is this, right? So I came up, I found her, tracked her down, and I guess I was so enthusiastic, I had actually persuaded this woman who didn't know me from Adam that she was going to give me lessons, right? And the only time she had was 6 a.m., and I was never an early riser, but for some reason, I was so inspired, so fully enthusiastic about this that I got up at 5 something and drove out there, and she gave me my first taste of belly dance. And I think she told me that I wasn't that great at it, actually, because I was, she was like, you need a lot of work. Again, dance is how we move, is how we are, right? If you're shut down, kind of like trying to figure out some trauma or something like that, and then somebody puts you on the dance floor, people are gonna see that, right? On some level, they're gonna be like, there's some stiffness, some choppiness, something's being processed for most people, unless of course you've been a practiced professional dancer and you already have those movements programmed into your neural patterns in your body. But most of us will show that. So because I had so many issues right at that point in time and was dealing with eating disorder and all that stuff, all that came, and she saw that as she was trying to give me movements, right? But I persisted, right? I was like, I wasn't deterred. And I found another teacher, and slowly built and built and built and became, I started booking gigs. My teacher started sending me out on little gigs and things like that. And that's how it grew. And yeah, I think you asked a few more questions other than that.
Oh my gosh. This is so very, very interesting. Now, the discovery right, that we made, and with cogno movement related to the hips, is that people, their emotional issue, whatever they're, let's say it's an eating disorder, or let's say that they had lost a loved one, or they had a specific trauma, the the hips in a certain place refused to move, or if it moved, they would jerk through the particular area. And it was like so mentally taxing for the person to actually move their hips through a specific area, which is just simply rotating the hips. And also we discovered this a particular eye positions that the eyes were difficult in also corresponded with a difficult hip position. And when that hip and the eye positions cleared up, that there was also a clearing of the emotional or grief or whatever be the case. So this is amazing, amazing, because I just never, me and Liz were talking, amazing because we never considered that belly dancers are the ultimate hip movers, where it's nice and fluid and they don't have any problems there. You can see how fluid it is. But my question to you is that you said you had an eating disorder back in the day. And did you notice, if you look back now, was there a change?
It was subtle. There was an increase of confidence, which started the healing process for me. There was an increase in strengthening of the physical body, right? Which also, because it's my belief, like as you strengthen the physical body, you expand your physical capacity, it starts to affect the mental and emotional bodies too. Mm-hmm. So my relationships, the first thing I saw, my relationships improved, right? I started to because I was terrible at relationships before, but I just couldn't sustain them. I started to make friends, better friends, that were more loyal, and I was more loyal. That was the first clue that manifested as I would persist, right? Show up, like twice a week and do my rehearsals and in classes and stuff like that.
So I'm just so curious. Were you aware when it was happening? Like, all of a sudden I'm going to class, and then were you aware enough to see the relationship at that time in between relationships with people and my hips are starting to move? Was that an awareness, or is it only from today's perspective?
From much later's perspective. Yeah, no, I was not. I was just kind of like, one day at a time kind of person at that time. So I did not have that awareness. I wish I did. I would have definitely started like, oh, let me play with this or do that. I noticed that the other thing I noticed was my financial, like my finances improved, right? And again, I didn't put two and two together for a long, long time why that is. And I'm trying to think of, and little things in the body improved. I think my vision improved a little. Like there was these connectors, because I think that, we're kind of electrical as bodies, right? So as you pull more energy from the earth, right? As you move things, as you kind of increase the circuit strength of certain organs and stuff like that, things improve. So yeah, I felt better. I had greater vitality. My vision was better because I never had great vision. I always had glasses and contacts and stuff. So there were little things that greatly improved, in the process. It was, And I noticed one thing. Because one of the things as a belly dancer that you do is you always try to include, it's a very inclusive dance. It's not like one of those where it's a performance and there's like the invisible fourth wall and, you're doing your tendus and whatever. This is a very much like I'm in, I'm down, my feet are bare feet on the earth. I'm here with the people. I'm pulling, and you pull people to dance. If somebody wants to dance, you're like, hey, come up and soon you have the whole family up dancing and stuff like that. But one thing I noticed is women, because when I was a kid, this was back like 80s, 90s, right? When I was dancing a lot. And a lot of people were very skinny. And so the ideal of the woman at that time was like very skinny with, sort of your six pack and like, so if a woman popped up to dance with me that had those washboard abs and had that sort of ideal boyish figure at the time, she couldn't belly dance. Could not. Her muscles were so trained and so tight that she couldn't really move like a woman. It was just like, it was.
Yeah.
Right? It was really interesting. Right. I also noticed, like back to, what I was saying about the finances, right? And this, again, a lot of this stuff, Bill, I put together like years later when I started becoming an energy healer and started really immersing myself in that world and, kind of put two and two together. But, I figured out the reason that I got so much more money when I was dancing. And a lot of it came, from the dance itself. But again, I just got better jobs. I got better, I just didn't have to worry about money that much anymore. And I realized like that I was actually totally unintentionally really stimulating and enlarging and blowing up my root and my sacral chakras, like my lower chakras. Like they were just getting really stimulated and huge. And now I understand like dancers that are real, like powerful dancers and all that stuff. They just get, people throw money and it's a custom. It's not anything bad. It's not anything, it's just a custom that as you're dancing, and usually it's weddings and all these events and parties and stuff like that, engagement parties, people will throw money. And I feel like it's it's like they are, again, completely unbeknownst to them, energetically responding to what's happening, right? Like the energy's pulling that money out of their wallet. I know it seems.
It's very interesting. It is so interesting. And the correlation in between those specific energy centers and that whole thing around abundance, because, this is the area of your abundance in this physical dimension, right? And it's also your creation, your area of creation, right? It is where a woman has the ability to actually create life itself, which is the ultimate power. You might be able to create, a house or a car, but creating life, that is basically godlike property, right? What does God do? He creates life.
Yeah.
Amazing.
It is. It's, there's so much, it's such a rich topic. There's so much in what you just said. I think we have to go on a break, Liz.
Yeah, we do have to go on a break in just a second, but it made me think that, in many generations, in many eras, abundance was a lot of kids. So what you're saying, Bill, too, is that it's not just money that comes. So that is the place of generation. And for some, it was having a lot of kids. And it's a really, really ancient art. And that back in history, fertility was such a big deal. Makes you wonder about why some of these art forms were created. If that was the idea, to actually open those chakras to create not just fertility, but abundance all the way around, having that be the anchor, all these kids, all these more people you have in your community equals abundance. So let's take a break. We'll hear from the UK Health Radio Network. And when we come back, let's talk about that, the ancient beginnings of or roots of belly dancing.
UK Health Radio, the station that makes you feel good. UK Health Radio, the station that makes you feel good.
And we're back. We're talking with Natasha Sankovich about, of all things, belly dancing and abundance. So I think the fertility is obvious, kind of in there, but abundance is a big part of it. We were talking about that there are some really ancient roots. And, it made me think how similar belly dancing is to, in some ways, to hula dancing. I'm wondering if they're related in antiquity. So tell us about that, about the origins.
It's so old that it's almost impossible to exactly pinpoint, right? When it started, how it started. We have recorded, we can see even in ancient India, temple dancers, that were there, that they were honoring a goddess, and that also kind of got, sort of manipulated in, throughout the centuries and all that stuff. And it didn't, resemble what it was, but and then there was also Bedouin dancers. That's when we have when there's like the first record of such kind of dance as being recognized as an art form. And this is when, colonists and people visiting Egypt and, that north part of Africa, they didn't really have access to women, because they were all hidden away, right? So you didn't really, as a visitor, you didn't see any women. They were all kind of behind closed doors. You only saw men. So the only women that they were able to have contact with and observe and see were Bedouins, who were completely outside of society in terms of how that society was structured. And those women were very free, right? And that's when they first started observing this kind of a dance, and they was so alien to them. I think they said, they're dancing, but they're dancing with the belly, because they were not used to these kind of circular dancers where like a woman would kind of do these soft circular movements with the hips, with the torso, and then they kind of coined the term belly dance, and it kind of grew from there, where, and in their society, in this, later on, they found out that the women that were in that society did dance. But as a matter of fact, when they had their celebrations, they hired, the Bedouins, and they were called almas, or women that specialized, and they would do entertainment just for women. So all the entertainment, everything was separate, right? And later, when you got into closer to the early 20th century, that kind of developed, where the costume, the traditional belly dance costume where the midriff is exposed, that actually was created in response of okay, how do we get these Westerners to pay money to go into these clubs? So we'll give them what they want. So they kind of mix the whole thing. The most famous club owner at the time in Cairo was Badia Masabni, a Syrian woman who was a dancer, opened up a club. She was seriously hardcore. She didn't even need security. She had a shotgun behind the bar, and if there was any trouble, and she kept those girls in check. A lot of them became like stars, right? But they wore those costumes, and they even had a European ballerina kind of teach them how to do veils and things like that. So all that was actually created post. This is not the original Bedouin dance, the costumes and, and everything. But in terms of what the dance is, it's actually how woman naturally moves. This is really how woman naturally moves. You don't see women just starting to move, like even instinctually, jumping up and down, getting up on point, yelling as they jump or whatever, kicking their legs. You don't really see that like a natural manifestation of joy, right? You see them kind of really, kind of moving and the movements that are, that are natural or kind of emanate out of belly dance are very feminine, very sensual, very creative, and they actually strengthen the pelvic floor tremendously. So the control that the dancers have over the pelvic floor is amazing. You don't see anybody else, very few people do. And actually helps in childbirth quite a bit because the undulations, the movements, the control of the abdominal wall and the muscle is, again, tremendously helpful in childbirth. There's so many things. I think I told you that earlier about like that when I would pull a woman up, right, to dance with me, because it's a very, a lot of people have the wrong idea about it. They think, oh, these girls, they're out there dancing in their bras and little skirts and people are throwing money. They're probably strippers. Not at all, right? They're just kind of a good belly dancer is actually just for that time an embodiment of the goddess energy, like an ancient goddess energy, right? It's almost like a certain homage to Mother Earth, right? Because you're barefoot, you're on the ground, you're pulling abundance, you're pulling, and women are supposed to be sensual. They're supposed to be sexy. They're supposed to move in the way to attract men and to have, for us to have life carry on, right? To create, again, that wealth of fertility and all that stuff. Am I just rambling on? Do you guys?
No, it's so interesting. What I noticed you say is that in one point, the dance was for women. It was women doing this for women. Yes. And, we do some work with birth and pregnancy, and it occurred to me, wow, okay, that would make sense. The origin of keeping that pelvic floor strong, making it easy for childbirth. Because if you're talking about Bedouins, they don't have a local hospital. So I'm wondering if it made the whole birth process maybe even safer or easier for women, out in the desert where all they have is one another. So that makes a lot of sense, creating that strength and flexibility at the same time. And I just find that so interesting that it's women for women. But then you were talking about the abundance part. So that was one of the things that made me so interested in this topic. So these women are dancing and they're invited or hired to come to celebrations like weddings, like birth parties. What do you call those? Baby showers, maybe christenings, all that kind of stuff. But when that happens and the woman starts dancing, some unique thing happens with the crowd. They start to throw what at the dancer?
Not lots of money. On the stage. Yeah. And I don't think this is even, it's like the energy pulls, right? The energy that is generated by that movement. It's just an old magic that people are, completely unknowingly doing, that it raises the vibration of the room. It just encourages, right? People are encouraged and they feel, nobody, because I would never, when I was dancing, I would never come up to anybody and be like, excuse me, where's your wallet, right? Like that never happens, right? You never, right? But they do. Right? It is, again, it's almost like there's an invisible energetic pull. I'm sure if someone had magic little glasses, they would see it happen in real time, right? If we could really witness, if our eyes were refined enough to see the energy. And later, when I started, studying energy healing and going more into metaphysical studies, I realized that, how like later on when you look back on your life and you kind of connect the dots and you're like, oh, okay. Because I never really understood, like your guides, I think, pull you. They put a little carrot there and you're like, I don't know why, but I'm so attracted to belly dance. I don't know why, but I love yoga. You know what I mean? It's almost like they were building a foundation for me, not only to keep my mind strong, my body strong, but to understand how powerful like physicality, how much respect we need to have for our body, how much power is in our body to make magic, right? To, balance ourselves, to regain our health, to regain our mental health, all that stuff. All that is possible with physical movement and postures. It's just tremendous. So what I was saying is when I look back and connect the dots, I can see how now I'm at the state where I can kind of put the whole thing together. Like, okay, So I danced and I have this knowledge for this. I did the yoga certification because I understand that now. I understand energy healing, and now I can kind of like really see the whole vision, pull it back and say, okay. So for example, one of the things I've learned in the energy healing modality I practice is, and I think I might even mention it to you, we call it prosperity squats, where you just kind of soften your knees and you bounce on your heels repeatedly, preferably facing north, right? The direction of prosperity. And it tremendously boosts the basic chakra, right? That's when typically it's great to do when if you're doing some kind of manifestation where you're trying to materialize something, you really want to give yourself the best chance possible. But I already did that for years, decades in belly dance, again, completely unknowingly. And I was always so thrilled. I'm like, oh, so exciting. Look at it coming back with all this money. And people are so generous, right? Not realizing that I did those heel bounces as a part of my choreography repeatedly, right? And I'm sure if I probably went through old videos, I'd say, oh yeah, see, I did 10 heel bounces and I, made more tips than when I didn't do the heel bounce. Right? That makes sense. And there's so many other things I discovered later on when working with clients, when teaching these, helping them get fit, basically using yoga, using Pilates, using belly dance, that if I were to show them, if I were to challenge their balance, again, a lot of things in dance, you hold your balance and all that stuff. In yoga, same, that they would start to heal their mental issues. And I would not even need to start the session communicating that to them. Like, hey, I see you got mental issues. Let's do this, right? I would just quietly set the intention internally by myself, invoke divine blessings. Again, internally, I would never open my mouth, and then repeatedly have them do these poses. Oh, we're going to balance again. And usually they would, whatever that would be challenging to them, they would usually dislike. But I'd be like, hey, I know you guys don't like it, but let's do it again, right? And after 2 months, I've even had one woman who was on very heavy medications like Klonopin and Prozac. I mean, it was just really sad. Tell me, hey, I don't know why, but I feel like I don't want to take Klonopin anymore. I'm making an appointment with my therapist. They're going to start to decrease safely my dosage and stuff like that. So again, every time, that I invoke these physical powers, right? And incorporated these postures, whether it's belly dance movement, whether it's balance movement, I saw results, right? So they do work. And if you set an intention, you really add a whole nother level of power, and that whole thing.
They really do. And there is science. I think you'll love this. There is some science behind this. So it turns out that I've actually, after we made the discoveries with cognitive movement around the hips, I was like, I wonder if there's any studies around this, because we're getting results and, there's nothing new under the sun. So what it turns out that this coccyx area, your whole movement there, there's been multiple studies done where it can actually relieve anxiety, stress, and other mental issues. Now, there is a reason for this. And the reason for this is when you crawl as a baby, you do a cross crawl pattern. Now, as part of the crawling, you can imagine yourself crawling. Guess what happens with your hips? Bump, 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 left, right. The little bump. You see that little diaper going away, like that, left and right. Well, that movement, right, it has a lot to do with the actual charge, this electrical charge that's at the base of the spine and its relationship with your brain. And the two halves of it working together. So if I'm only in the logic side, or if I'm only in the creative side, right, I haven't really married those two sides up, so the information starts to go between the two sides, right? then my life is difficult. I have struggles. But here you are, right? A living example of somebody who just began these beautiful movements that are totally natural, and you got results for yourself, right? In relationships right away. And the electricity, if you could see it, the electricity was actually firing in between the base and the brain, right? The base and the brain and the eyes are all one neurological system. So it's absolutely wonderful that, you're out there helping people with this. And how cool is it that you showed them? There's another factor that happens, and it's called the cerebral spinal fluid and the cerebral spinal fluid pump. And you are pumping that. So this fluid now going up the spine is now working more efficiently as well. So it is a really wonderful therapeutic thing that you could actually go out and begin to do. And as you're out there helping people, what a joy. It's probably a lot of fun for you to help people.
Oh, I love it. I love it. And it's interesting because on some level, right, we think, as a society, or at least, my parents' viewpoint was things that are physical, are not, there are things you do when you're young, you play sports, you dance a little here and there. But then when you really want to be serious and be respectable, you get a desk job somewhere, or you're some kind of a, a upstanding citizen, professional, whatever, and in some level that kind of got imprinted in my head. So I never respected, embraced the physical part or as much as and valued it as much as it's valuable and how much it has to give us, right? And until I started really, again, learning energy healing and starting to see, its power to heal and how much we have to truly respect, honor, right? And work with our physical body like we would with somebody we love very much, right? Like treat it with such respect.
So come up against another break. This conversation is going by so fast. I can't believe it. Okay, we need to hear from the good folks at the UK Health Radio Network, and we'll be right back with Natasha Sankovic. UK Health Radio, take it away.
UK Health Radio, the station that makes you feel good. The station that makes you feel good.
And we're back. We're talking about belly dancing, abundance, and the benefits for your health in so many ways. So I had a question about that. So it's probably really good for your internal organs, I would imagine, as well. Like getting your intestines to move, massaging, all of those organs, all the way up into even the stomach and the liver and the spleen and the pancreas, all of that. Would that be true?
Yes. There's a movement, there's there's 5 core movements in belly dance, right? And one of them is undulations, or some dancers call it the camel. And it's when you kind of undulate, moving the spine, right? Like this. Right. And it's can be used frequently. It's used as a traveling movement as you're traveling from one side and you're kind of undulating and all that stuff. But it's not easy. It takes a while for people to learn it. And again, that's why, ladies don't go out there and think that like 6-packs are great. We don't want to be men, right? You want to have that mobility, that that movement of the spine. But it's very, very healthy, and it does all of that. It helps the digestion. It helps like the organs. It massages things. It helps things go. And I found it, and I know hopefully this is not like TMI, but in menopause, I found that the symptoms of menopause, like if you're dry or, are incredibly relieved with belly dance, right? When you're, again, probably connected to what Bill was saying. Everything gets lubricated, including the spine and stuff like that. You just really, it's a wonderfully healing, and powerful modality for women.
There's so many things I think that we have forgotten about our physical bodies. And, that's one of them, the ways that we take care of ourselves as women. And if you're out in the middle of the desert and you don't have a lot, you probably need to adapt and develop ways to take care of yourself and the women around you. It's so interesting, though, about the energy medicine part of it, about the energy that comes out of it. You said that, your first and second chakra energy gets really, really big, which is our creation, which is our abundance. And long before cognitive movement was developed, there was this thought for me about how we're always trying to get out of our body spiritually, astro travel, get to heaven, get out of these physical bodies. But it occurred to me one day how much information is in these physical bodies, how much there is for us here, and how our bodies are what translates all of the information in the universe while we're in them, right? So that was one of the underpinnings, even for us as cognitive movement, that these bodies have a whole lot available to us for helping us manifest, for helping us grow. So would you have any kind of a little hint or tip for anybody who kind of is hearing this and is like, wow, that sounds pretty good, pretty interesting. What could somebody at home do to kind of start to open those root chakras and start to maybe use this for just a tiny bit of manifesting? You also mentioned, there's that bit of magic potion stirring the pot movement. So what's in there for us, Natasha? What can people try on of this?
Yes. So, I would start, right? The belly dance, if it's done correctly, it's isolation. So I would start by moving the hips and going clockwise, right? So that's when you're pulling things in. If you're drawing, like when you're moving like clockwise, like it's pulling things in.
So would that be starting to the right? You move
starting to the right. Yeah. Like the clock moves, like going, so you want to stand. So let's say that let's just say you have an intention. You want to set the intention to, invite more abundance, right? You have a certain project, you're about to go into a meeting the next day, you want to pump up your root. I would face north primarily. Like this is not something that typically is learned in belly dance. This is kind of combining energy healing stuff with belly dance, but face north. And I would even add an invocation, right? So everything is just much better and more pronounced, right? If you ask the supreme being, God, the goddess, and just ask for them to kind of like bless your project, bless whatever it is, your application for loan, your business. And then I would lift up the sternum, right? You want to lift up, you want to grow tall. And then I would start circling the hips, and I would probably go a nice, 8 to 10 times going clockwise, right? And just really put your attention. So wherever your attention is, almost like feel like that area lighting up. Like imagine that chakra just starting to vibrate and get active, right? Put your attention there, consciousness there. Good. Pause and then go the other way, because you do want to be balanced. You don't want to be pulling it in and not balancing out. You want to like shake out the stuff out of the chakra too, right? And then take a breath. Right. Then I would pump up the root, right? So that's your sacral. Then I would pump up the roots. I would again soften my knees and I would lift my heels just like we do prosperity cards and just do some bumps with the heels, right? Again, pulling in, that's like really pumping up the root chakra. Then, for belly dance, like let's say that you want, also greater health, greater, like your, maybe your digestion's gotten a little slow here and there. I would then do undulations, and I would probably have to demonstrate this to you. But if you guys put belly dance undulation and Google it, I'm sure there's like tons of videos that demonstrate it. But basically always start out by lifting, push the stuff out and then scoop it in. And, so it's a beautiful movement. also,
It almost looks like your belly from your hips to your sternum, like kind of like moving like a snake is kind of
it
what it
is like
looks
a
like for
snake,
people on the
like,
radio.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Look, yeah, I know. I don't want to make people go like, "What is she talking about?" Yeah, just undulation, belly dance, camel movement, and you'll see some really nice demonstrations, I'm sure. Right. The thing to watch out for is I've noticed this in Egypt, right? Because I would travel there. I've done several projects, and it's very testament to the power of belly dance because you have dancers in Egypt. And to be a woman, number one, to kind of come out as like, I want to be an entertainer, I want to be on stage as a woman in a Middle Eastern society is not encouraged. It's very, very much frowned upon. Maybe if your family is very liberal, they'd be okay with you becoming maybe a newscaster or an actress as long as you know, don't play a role that shames them or something like that. But a belly dancer, that's like, you might as well just tell them that you want to, you know, be a hooker, right? It's very, very, it's strange, right? But these women that choose this path and dance, you see them just, you know, become incredibly wealthy. Some of them are, you know, kind of like skyrocket to fame. They're asked to be in movies. They appear in magazines. They're known. There's a couple of very, very famous ones that have huge following. It's like it's very prestigious to have like a belly dancer, like for example, like Dina, to be at your wedding. You'd have to be a very, very wealthy couple to afford her, right? You know, so it's like really interesting to me how, yes, they might lose, you know, their family might disown them, and that happens very frequently, but they become independent, wealthy, famous. If they choose to allow that, receive that, right? They definitely are able to do that. So, so it's an interesting thing. I think you were asking me something, and I just sort of digressed, forgive me, into this whole thing about, so the thing to watch out for is if you want to have a balanced energy field. You don't want to become bottom heavy, which can happen. Let's say that you have congestion here. You have a congestion in your heart, in your throat. Maybe your upper chakras aren't getting as much attention, but you're bottom heavy. You're going to become very materialistic. And I've seen that also happen with dancers. As a matter of fact, it's like almost like kind of a joke in the belly dance communities, like kind of like, oh, that's the greedy one, you know. I know I'm probably going to get some emails after this interview airs, but it's true. Some of them can become very, very materialistic. They can only see, they're not interested in romance and all that stuff. They want to see like, how can I get more money? Okay. So it's you can, like, again, you can really use this technique and really enrich yourself. Absolutely.
So this is super, what a fascinating conversation, things you don't ordinarily think about. So, the obvious, right, is, okay. Is the movements, the ones that you've seen, the belly dancer that you've seen that are bottom heavy, and, are they not moving more of the top area? Are they moving differently? Or is it just the fact that they are 100% focused on, the material world and kind of a one-way flow of revenue? I just want to just see if you've noticed anything around that.
Well, the way that, and as before, when I used to travel to Egypt and meet people or dancers in the community, I would just, kind of understand that was the culture, right? That was the culture. And I interpreted it at the time as being, well, they look at it as like they were already, have a loss of reputation. They're not accepted members in, like in typical society. They're not anybody's idea probably of a very acceptable wife. So I thought, okay, so they're probably just thinking, what have I got left? I'm just going to make myself as rich as possible. So I thought I understand that. Why not? And then when I learned more about the dynamics of energy, I found that when people, for example, let's say if they received or are holding some elements of shame in that chakra or in that particular part of the field. So whenever you expand a chakra, like if you have a seed of shame, if you don't accept yourself, if you have any seeds of greed, that will also blow up. Almost like if you have a balloon and you put a little Sharpie marker on it, when you blow up the balloon, that marker spot will also enlarge. Mm-hmm. So, and if they don't have a capacity to process that, to balance that, to clean up the upper chakras, whether through working with someone, whether it's through, any kind of therapy, they'll just become really more and more rooted and materialistic.
Mm.
They're not going to,
yeah.
Those seeds of those, not bad behaviors, but those like little mini traumas or things that, or they haven't processed yet are going to really ground them. And that's how I see it now. So the chakra that works with the sacral chakra is the throat chakra, the primary throat chakra. I think it's just the higher center of creativity. So that's why you see like, when people are very articulate and all that stuff, very creative, they typically have a very strong throat chakra, and their corresponding chakra, the sacral chakra, is also very strong. So when people don't know how to regulate that, right, that's when you see these scandals with very powerful people, creative people, like they just can't seem to, they have affairs, they do all these crazy things, because they're tremendously, they're energetic and creative, and their sacral is also very powerful. So you see also, I think, because that is also kind of the shadow side, right, of the strong sacral, right? Some of the dancers can be changing husbands a lot or boyfriends and things, and really enjoy getting the sometimes, like crazy attention. That also does happen, right? So you have like anything, the polarity. So, and I want to mention that because I think it's a tremendously healing and powerful dance and modality, and it has ancient roots. And I'm sure if all of us kind of really studied it and dug up, old history, we could probably find the whole magic, right, history of belly dance. And we could probably do all sorts of stuff, create spells and, invoke and open portals left and right, just doing a couple of belly dance moves with some, mantras, right? Like that's how strong it is. Like that's how much energy you can generate and pump up, from doing some of these movements. But again, you have to be careful, right? You have to use it for good.
Well, that sounds like fun. Stirring up some trouble. I like that idea. All right, so we are just rapidly approaching the end of our time on the UK Health Radio Network platform. So I want to make sure that we have time for everybody to find out where to find you. But before we do that, I want to let everybody know there is an extended conversation that happens after our, 50 minutes that we have on UK Health Radio that you can listen to anywhere you like to find your podcasts. Look up hashtag Wellbeing Podcast or the UK Health Radio Network, anywhere you like to find podcasts, iTunes, Spotify, all those places you can find it. If you want to see our faces and see all of the movements that Natasha's been doing, you can find us on YouTube at Cogno Movement, and you can watch the full extended interview there. So will you tell everybody, Natasha, where they can find you, get more information, and actually work with you?
My website, natashasenkovic.net. And you need me to spell it, Liz, or?
Yeah, spell it for everyone and tell everybody what are the options? How can people work with you?
So I'll spell it first. It's Natasha, S as in Sam, ENKOV like Victor, ICH.net. And and you can, reach me. I have a little contact form. I work with people individually. Like with energy healing. I also do intuitive readings. And I just did a program. Once in a while, I will offer a program where I will incorporate physical movement with meditation and stuff like that. I find that to be really powerful. This one has just concluded, but if you're interested, I'd love to hear from you. Visit my website, contact me and say, hey, I want to belly dance and make money. And I will, I will respond right away.
All right. That all sounds very awesome.
There's something else. Liz actually is involved in this as well. I'm releasing a wonderful summit talking about spirituality to success. So it's very similar, this kind of topic about like using tools that are not so common, right? Not so known to generate success in the material world. And Liz gives me an awful, amazing, awesome interview. Awfully good that you're going to love. So come and opt in and I'll invite you, send you the link.
All right. Any last thoughts, Bill McKenna? We have 1 minute.
Oh my gosh. What an amazing thing that was unexpected today. Learning all about the health benefits of belly dancing. Who would have thought? Who would have thought that it's really a tool for manifesting? It's a tool that can help to bring you health physically, emotionally, mentally. It's all tied in. It's one system. Contact Natasha and start your journey.
Okay, everybody join us in the extended conversation. Until then, thanks so much, Natasha. Everyone in UK Health Radio Land, be safe and be well. And we'll be back next week with some more amazing conversations.
UK Health Radio, the station that makes you feel good. UK Health Radio, the station that makes you feel good.
So we're back. It's New Life Perspectives radio show extended version, where we get to talk to our guests about all the weird stuff that unleash this conversation. So we were talking about belly dancing in the first conversation, and who knew belly dancing had metaphysical properties? I mean, I didn't. Did you, Bill?
No, it never even occurred to me, about that. But, it actually makes absolute perfect sense now that, she's brought everything to light. It's amazing how energetic and the physical have all worked kind of together for this art form. And it's an amazing art form. We just don't have that much of it, or I guess I don't get exposed. I think in my lifetime, I had exactly one time that there was, I went somewhere and it was like, hey, there's a big surprise coming. It was like, and all of a sudden there, out comes the belly dancer. And, it certainly wasn't what I expected. It's I guess it's very foreign, and beautiful all at the same time. It's amazing.
Well, I think what's interesting too, we were talking off camera just a little bit. We don't have to go into it too far, but that it really is a woman's art. And possibly, I mean, we don't know the real origins necessarily, but possibly a way for women to keep pelvic floor healthy, uterus, maybe healthy organs, that it's a very soft art. But I said earlier in our conversation that hula, it has a lot of similarity, and the hula dancers have a similar shaped body in a way. Is that correct? Do you know of similarities with that?
I do. Yeah, there is something to that. And the movements are similar because there's the concept in belly dance of isolation, right? Like you isolate the movements, so the torso is still while the hips move and vice versa. The movements are circular. There's, you're barefoot, similar kind of costuming and stuff. So definitely there's something. And if you're going to where I think I'm going, right, that there is something maybe ancient, right?
Yeah.
Like cultures sort of, even, as the continents changed and broke up and, Earth went through its calamities thousands of years ago, there was something that remained as a cultural dance.
Do you think flamenco dancing has some similarity? I'm thinking about it. It's a little harder, isn't it?
Yeah, there is something about the stomping that is, but it's different. It's
their hips don't move as much.
No,
not really hippy.
Yeah, I love flamenco. However, there's an element that's because there's an innate softness in both, belly dance and hula. There's a softness, there's circular movements, there's fluidity, and the exact opposite is true in flamenco, where it's like you're sharp, you're hard, you're boom, you're dramatic.
Yeah.
Rigid spine.
Yes, and a rigid spine.
Interesting. Well, I think that idea about moving the spinal fluid too, getting that pump going. There's a lot that we do in Cogno movement intended to move energy up and down the spine. We work in the ears where the acupuncture and acupressure points are for moving energy up and down the spine. We do that heel stomping movement, rolling up on the heels and thumping down. Bill's been using some of the hip movement. So it's funny when those things just sort of naturally moved into the work without us realizing about that belly dancing has all of those attributes. So what I wanted to ask about, Natasha, you are an energy healer as well, a distance energy healer. And I want to talk about some weird stuff. If it includes belly dancing, that would be great. But tell us some of the cool, weird stuff that you've seen happen. Things that maybe you could put in the miracle category because you just couldn't expect it to happen, but it did.
Yeah. I'll give you one story that happened to me about a year ago. I mean, there's so many, but if you want like a dramatic one. So about a year ago, right? This was like 11 o'clock at night. I think Tim wasn't home. He was away on a gig. And I'm, with the dogs and I got the TV and my mom calls me, right, on the video from Croatia. And she is crying and sobbing. And she says, you have to do something. Your brother is dying. This is my younger brother.
Oh, no.
Just being he had an aneurysm. He's being airlifted to a special hospital, right, and she's beside herself. And I'm like, right. So I say, hang on. So I could, again, like one of the ways that's really cool, like I can scan the chakra. So I told her, I says, he's still with us. He's not going anywhere right now. Like the root is strong, right? Like that's again, which is really cool. Like I'd love to have a belly dance class and then scan everybody's root before and after.
Yeah.
I would be shocked how big it was. And we were able to, so because she was able to, it was so early, the aneurysm just happened, that we cleaned up the whole brain with energy. It was very, very gray. Everything around his head was gray. It was really like one hemisphere was really like hugely congested. The other one was depleted. And we just cleaned up everything. We, meaning I did, worked on him for like 2 hours. And as soon as, next morning I called up some help so somebody could keep cleaning. Basically for about a week daily, we did healings on him, and he went home and he's 100%.
Wow.
It was like, well, I thought the blood vessel burst, but there's no blood in the brain. What happened? Da, da, da. And I think the only thing that he's got, he has to kind of pay attention to is just got to follow a low sodium diet. So it's just amazing. And the energy, basically this stuff was practiced for thousands of years, like in some cultures, like of the East. And again, was only taught from teacher to student. And then you have certain cultures that were really secretive. Like you see like certain things and now I recognize them. For example, I see martial art competition and they're like scanning, they're like doing this, off the stage. And you're like, what is that guy doing? Some weird meditate, but he's actually scanning his opponent's energy to seeing if there's any weakness or like holes that he, where he's going to punch and stuff like that. So all that stuff is like just amazing. Any other questions you have? I could just ramble on about this because I love it so much. I feel like it's so like reality bending.
Yeah, I can see Bill has one.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, so this remote influence is just absolutely fascinating. I know the phones are going to blow up for you after this interview because, you're helping your brother with energy. That was amazing. Amazing. The other things that you've helped people with your energy work. Maybe if you could tell us some other stories that.
Yeah. Let me look at it like a different one. So I usually tap my heart chakra, right? Like when I want to have access, right, to more intuitive information. So I just want to make sure, that's why if you guys are like, why is she doing that? It's because I want to make sure that like I download and tell you the story that will most resonate, right, with and be most informative to the people that are listening. There's one thing that is really easy to do to heal in energy healing or in the modality I practice is migraines. Like it takes about 45 minutes, right? And people like usually people call me, because people don't want to, even family members, they don't want to bother or friends like that suffered, like they feel guilty about taxing me with, working on them and stuff like that. So usually they'll call me when they've tried everything. I've have like cold compresses, I've taken Advil, I've done this, I've taken all that stuff and nothing's working. So if you look again, and I don't, I'm not clairvoyant in terms that I can't see, energy, but I can feel it, right? And this is something, again, that's not particular to me, that can be taught, right? With some practice. Some people, again, are going to be a little bit more gifted and pick it up sooner. But so when someone comes with a migraine, it's typically people that are they want to do things correctly. And they're just a little like intenso. And I'm going, so there's like this already kind of a pattern in the body, right? They're a little bit more like hard on themselves. And so what I usually do is I clean the front solar plexus is really congested with migraine people. Then that stuff goes to the back solar plexus, which is right on the back side of the spine. Again, very congested. And then it goes up the spine. Their upper back muscles become hard as rocks. And then all the vessels in their brain start pulsating. And then they're in for it. Then they're like, oh my God. And, because the nausea from the solar plexus, everything. So very simple. You clean the solar plexus back and front. You clean the liver. And then a lot of times by that time, they're already going, oh my God, I can breathe now. I'm not nauseous. I think I'm going to be okay. And then for the finale, you just clean the head and the upper back. Like 45 minutes, depending how receptive they are. Some people are like this, right? So you have to really relax them and stuff like that. But it's a phenomenal gift because I was one of those people. I was like, I got to do, super stressed out. So, and I would have chronic migraines, like bad, like couple of days, just, on the floor with like a bowl next to my bed, that I would throw up in. I mean, that was, and now that I've learned this, I just kill it right away. I'm like, oh, if I feel this, I'm just going to clean this, clean that, clean the head, done. So, life-changing for people that suffer.
That's amazing.
I just did this for one of the other speakers. I don't know if she'll talk about it. One of the other speakers in the event that you're in, Spirituality Success, she was like, I have to travel. I have so much to do. My migraine is, I can't do this. Right. And I was like, oh, well, just give me 45 minutes. And
interesting.
It works every time.
So I have another experience with migraines. I want to see what you think about it. We may have talked about it off camera, but I would get migraines, but I was not a chronic migrainer. Like twice a year, maybe I would get a migraine. And it was the visual kind of would start with a hole in my vision and then electricity in the eyes. And actually the year I met Bill McKenna, it was crazy how many of these was getting. And I never knew why I got them. I never could figure it out. But that year I realized I went to Mount Shasta. Right after that, I left for Sicily. And both times we were kind of going on these spiritual quests. First one at Mount Shasta, we didn't realize that's what we were doing, but it was happening. So right before a big energetic shift, I would get this electricity. And if I wasn't careful, I knew how to mitigate it so I never got pain. But it took some doing. Well, around that same time, well, maybe I guess it was a couple years later, I realized that I could actually put salt, rock salt in my hands, Himalayan salt, and stop the electricity. I was literally crazy energy. I could pull it right out into my hands and stop it before it ever got to that point where there was a headache and all that kind of stuff. But I started to notice the pattern, like that when there would be a big energetic spiritual shift, I would get one of these crazy electrical migraines. So I hadn't had one in a really long time. And we went down to Mount Shasta. It's just an hour and a half from here. And about a mile out, I start to get this hole in my vision. I'm like, what is happening? Like, this can't be a migraine. And the next thing you know, the electricity starts. Luckily, I travel with salt all the time now, put it in my hands, and I stopped it. But the energy in Mount Shasta was just hot, hot, hot that day. And the minute I got out, and there was nothing. But in that energy, this electrical thing was going off. So have you ever had an experience with those kind of migraines? What do you think that is?
The electrical one?
Yeah.
That's gosh, that's even easier than, doing energy healing. You just grab some Himalayan salt.
Yeah, right. It's what I do. It works amazing. And I shared that with a lot of people. It was a funny story about how that happened, but I shared it with a whole lot of people and they all said it works for them too, but with an electrical migraine. So that's what I call it, because that's what it looks like. I think it's called actually an aural migraine.
Yeah. I have not ever had those the way you describe them. So I'm not familiar with, I could probably go up and ask for you and see if you want me to?
If you want to. I was just curious about it.
Okay. Yeah, it is kind of electricity. I guess some people are just really sensitive to that or vibrate to that because they do feel like you're almost getting a little, it's going to sound strange, but almost through the feet. One of the things that I learned or I was taught by my teacher is whenever you take a shower to wash, put a little salt and scrub the bottom of your feet with salt just to clear out all the congestion. So your electrical circuits, because we take on a lot of stuff from there are cleaned up. But I don't know if that would help if you just did that consistently, clean the bottom of the feet with salt.
Maybe. It's one of those things where I never know when it's going to happen. But now I know when it does, that right after, within the week and a half after, there's going to be a big energetic shift or a big shift in my life. That tends to be. So I've kind of just assumed it's just energy building. It's electricity building. And the work that Bill and I do, because we've measured through BioWell, we know that when people change their consciousness level, their voltage is also higher, more available. Their bodies are actually healthier with voltage. So I don't know. It's just one of those things. So what else? Tell us some other really interesting energy healing stories. What else you got?
The thing that is really remarkable and quick with energy healing is we call it psychotherapy. So there are, and you can really feel this. So there was one gentleman I was working on and I remember working on him and I got to the throat and then suddenly I felt like I wanted to drink alcohol. And I said, hey, are you drinking? And he was like, yes, I didn't want to tell you. Right. I guess he was embarrassed, but that was truly what was contributing to his, condition. So what you can do with energy healing, not only, alleviate anxiety, right? So there are certain they're like little elementals or I call them I see them as bugs, and they get stuck into certain energy centers. And certain conditions like addictions and stuff like that, you can see they get stuck. They like, for example, the alcohol ones, like they're like little teeny fishy type things, and they get stuck here, just above the kidneys. They go in the solar plexus. So when you clean them out really well, right, and then pump up fresh prana into that center, close it up, the person will stop craving alcohol. The problem is a lot of times it's part of their habit. They're already that's how they think that they treat themselves. That's how they feel like they feel good, or they have a social life around it and stuff. But the cravings will go away. Again, I've seen people, we did in class, there was one guy who was terribly, terribly claustrophobic. And all we did is we just cleaned out his solar plexus, because put him in an elevator packed with people. He was totally okay. Didn't even break a sweat. So it can be very quick. Things that people are plagued with, for like a long, long time, right? A lifetime of suffering can be fixed relatively quickly. The only thing that there's a difference, like anxiety and depression, right? So because I remember working on this one woman, and she called me and she really sounded like she was in a terrible state, like didn't want to leave her house and all that stuff. So I did a pretty intensive, labor-intensive protocol for her for anxiety, because that's what she kind of communicated. And then she emailed me and said, there's no difference, you suck, no change. And I'm like, what? How? I worked so hard. And it turned out like I forgot to scan her root chakra. So when I scan someone's root chakra, if it's really small and feeble, that person is actually depressed. They don't want to stay on the planet anymore, right? So and you can also tell when someone is ready to leave the planet, the root chakra will shrink considerably so the soul can comfortably exit. So what I should have done is truly a whole different physical protocol for getting her more grounded and locked into the planet.
What does that mean to clean it up? What do you actually do?
Oh, yeah. So that's something that is so the healing modality I use is pranic healing, and it's a sister science or sister modality of Reiki. But what we do, we believe that you can't just put stuff energy into someone without cleaning up that area. So a lot of times that area is congested. The way we see it, like you can kind of scan and feel, it feels really like a little imaginary energetic wall. So you can do it with a hand, right? Or a crystal. I can show you, I use a crystal now because it just makes it go faster. You have to use like a natural clear quartz. And I just clean out or I pull out, like I pull it in, I pull out all the heat or all the junky junks out of the chakra. And then once it's clean, that's 80% of the work. A lot of times people already are healed once you take out the blocks or the obstructions to a normal energy flow. And then, conservatively, you put in a little fresh prana just to kind of jumpstart them. But again, I've seen older people, if I put in too much energy, they'll get congested. Like my mom can only take a little bit, right? If I really crank it up and put it in there, she'll have a headache. She'll be unhappy. So yeah, so you have to kind of know, accurately diagnose the person, really talk to the person and see what exactly are they, are they sad? Are they anxious? They have disturbing thoughts. And the report is once we do I do a healing for someone that suffers from chronic anxiety or just disruptive thoughts. Most commonly, it's not like a big, it's like they're suddenly relieved because it's quiet. They realize those thoughts really weren't them. They were just little thought forms they were generating and feeding, right? And they were kind of creating that static in their field. So it's again, people tend to get so convinced that they're broken and so convinced that they have, I have all these issues and these thoughts and I just can't seem to blah, blah, blah. And when all they have is like gnarly, overfed thought forms that need to be popped, right? And the energy field needs to be cleaned up so they can breathe, so they can have a good night's rest. So it's again, quite remarkable that it's not, you don't have to pop pills. You don't have to create side effects or make the pharmaceutical companies even richer. Just go to your energy healer. The other thing I just wanted to mention, just to kind of so it's complete the information. You can work on someone, like as a healer, you can work on someone, but they at one point in time have to make a decision. They have to use their own willpower to stay on that path, right? And this is where the willpower is. It's right here. It's the ajna. It's right here between the eyes. So a lot of times I will help them, right? If I know they're really trying to stay, not to think reattract those negative thoughts or, start smoking again, whatever it is, you really want to add more energy and make this center bigger so their willpower is stronger, so they don't fall back or attempt it again. So it's an interplay, right? It's an interplay between a cooperation between the person that's being healed, like they have to be receptive and willing and willing to step up. The healer that has to be, persistent and also sensitive to this changing vibration or the person, and so it's kind of like a partnership in a way, right? And then we all have to be sensitive to how their energy's shifting, changing, where their mood is at. So it's not like a straightforward science. It's like kind of like adjust and redirect kind of a thing. I don't know. Does that make sense? I know you guys are totally woo-woo, so that's why I'm like, I can just tell them and they'll be totally okay with it. But I still have people that will actually, I remember talking to a friend, a former coach of mine who suffers from terrible migraines. And I remember offering to her saying, hey, let me help you. No, I'm very Christian now. I don't like.
That's a good one.
It was strange, right? I'll suffer. Thank you very much. So again, you have to be really, sensitive of who you offer it to or who you speak to about it, because some people might find it intrusive or offensive to their faith.
Yeah. It's funny how, another word for prophet is today, it's a psychic. That's what it was back in the day. They called them prophets, and all this is all interconnected. Your ability to know and then know what to do, right? You know what to do. Obviously there's some training, but you are just a person who knows what to do. And so here's a strange question. So there's anxiety, but then there's also people who suffer with panic attacks, extraordinary, their body is in a full convulsions and reacting, out of control. So tell us about that when you deal with them, and are you seeing anything like active in a certain energy center or part of their system, and what you do for that?
Yeah. So that's a very, very kind of if basically their solar plexus is super active. They have it out there 30 feet and it's pulsating. Right. And then their brain is also, there's I forget what is the little amygdala or something, some part of the brain is also super, super charged. So the process that it would be immediately, right. Cleaning, usually probably take about a good 30 minutes just to clean their solar plexus and then calm it down, make it smaller, regulate it. Then you'd want to clean their heart, and make the back heart chakra bigger. God brings somebody peace. They suddenly feel more loving, more at peace. And then finally, you want to also clean the brain, because the brain has got some misfiring in there.
Yeah.
It just, yeah. I also see people sometimes, and I see this more and more. I don't know if this is getting more popular or maybe becoming more aware of it, that are picking up. They're very sensitive and they just soak up like a sponge the energies around them, and they think it's theirs. Like I see that like a lot. Like they'll come in a room and they'll suddenly feel anxious or upset, or and they'll think, oh my God, it's me, or like disoriented or something like that. And they'll start to, and we all do this, they'll start to justify it. Oh yeah, I must be really sad or upset or angry because yesterday so-and-so said this, and or something. They'll find a reason in their own life to justify or to own that, when in reality it doesn't even belong to them. So I find that kind of like a lot of anxious people, they're also just very sensitive people that just sponge up a lot of junk from their environment, and they think it's theirs, and they start to, kind of feel shame about it or think that somehow they have these issues, when a lot of it was just soaked up from somebody.
Right.
Oh, one more thing, if I may. The other thing that people don't know, like, and that could really be a bummer, is crystals. Like there was in one of our workshops, this happened. This one woman came in and she just had crippling joint pains, and she had top healers like working on her. Let's help her, nothing. And suddenly somebody noticed she was wearing a ruby ring, and they were like, well, did you clean this ring? She was like, oh no, my poor mother left this to me. My poor mother, who was suffering with cancer for the last 5 years of her life. And I put it on to remember her. And the minute they took that ring off and did the cleaning again, the pain was completely gone. So crystals, especially like red ones and stuff, like those guys can really hold a lot of energy, and just the whole aura is just bathed. So that sickness and that disturbance is all that is just, the congestion is still contained in the power of that crystal. So again, like I would never, even for myself, like let's say before I even put my citrine ring on, which is my dissolver of obstacles, is I'll clean it. I'll do a little cleaning. I put a little alcohol, spray with alcohol with a couple of drops of lavender, and I'll ask the crystal to just release any congestion, because maybe I was grumpy yesterday and I don't want to be grumpy today, right? Much more so if I bought the ring, somewhere at some show where like 100 people handled it.
But salt can do that thing too. I do that with mine. I put them in, salt, and or put them out in the sun, to bathe in it, and it really is like cleaning something, removing congestion, I think, in the crystals. And it's one of those things, it's a phenomenon where if you go into a crystal shop and see the owners of that, people who spend all day long in the center of all of these stones, they're not always the healthiest people. And I've noticed, my daughter and I will go into a local crystal shop, or, we live by Mount Shasta. Sometimes you go in those places and it feels amazing. And other times you walk in the door and we're turned right around and go back out. And I think that the stones have absorbed the energy of anyone who was just there. So people go in crystal shops for a lot of reasons. Sometimes they just love crystals, and other times they're searching because they're suffering. So you can feel that. And so I think the crystals will discharge and reflect that energy. So a person in that all day long is probably being flooded by that. And, we use crystals in all of our, well, not all, but a whole lot of our electronics, because they're very, very conductive and good at storing energy. So this makes very perfect sense that a stone would gather energy and then release it when it's no longer, absorbing it. So really makes good sense. Look at your crystals, clean them, put them in salt, put them out in the sun, do some other things, whatever you need to do. But I think that's really important.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I want to share one last thing, if I may, because I found this to be so cool. So I just did a program. We just ended it, but we started doing mantras. right? So we do like a whole process, right, of yoga. Again, following that 80-20 rule, 80% inner purification, cleaning your junk out, and then 20% of putting in, whatever, manifesting, whatever inflow of fresh prana you want. And so we would do the yoga, we would do like a meditation, cleansing, and then we would do like play mantra. And one of the mantras, I mean, they're just all fantastic, but there is a mantra that is so great and it's so useful. They have such practical uses. So for example, Om Namah Shivaya Om, right? So the mantra to Lord Shiva. So there's magic woven in those sounds. Like there's magic and power in sounds and specific mantras. Even better if you, before saying that mantra, you invoke and ask Lord Shiva for your help. But like, let's say that you're exhausted, right? Let's say you're tired and you're something very simple, like you're on a hike and you're like, I don't know if I can get up to that mountain or get back. Just start chanting Om Namo Shivaya Om, and just keep chanting it. You will be given the power. It powers up your will tremendously. I play it like when Tim and I moved and we were surrounded by boxes and like, and you're just exhausted after we were like, I don't want to move any boxes, right? But we needed to get things organized. He put on, and I didn't even tell him, he instinctually knew. He put on the Om Namo Shivaya chant and just had it like chant going on and repeat, and we got everything done. It will give you power, right? It will give you the ability to complete, to power through, to have the will to do it. So, and I find like any kind of a tool that helps you live a better life on the planet, right? Strengthens your body, strengthens your abundance, makes you better, brighter, is awesome, right? What's the point of being somewhere tucked away, chanting and, becoming disembodied. Oh, and the other thing I wanted to share, like this is for all my yogi people. This mudra, right? The index finger touching the thumb will make your upper chakras bigger, which is awesome if you already are very established, you have your wealth, your material well-being is taken care of. Great. Balance it out with your higher chakras. But for like someone who's a yoga teacher or, like trying to pay their rent and they're spending hours in this, you're going to just you're going to become more spacey and more poor, right? Because you're driving.
Interesting.
Yeah. And I see this happen to people, and I never understood. I'm like, what?
So they need more belly dancing. Then.
They need more belly dancing. Stop yoga.
Yeah, that belly dancing, open the roots, balance that thing out. All right.
Yeah.
What is the mudra for the first and second chakras then? If that is gonna enlarge the over the head, right? What is the ones for the base?
Yeah, I can't say, not because I don't want to. It just those are taught in the higher courses, and the reason is because it's just dangerous to strengthen the lower chakras without cleaning them out, because you see like the same thing, like a little bit more dramatically explained, but like people that win the lotto and then they, end up worse off than before. So we're not supposed to teach, like they kind of like, it's not like we sign non-disclosures, but we kind of are bound.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you for all the great information. Liz and myself are so grateful to you.
I have such a great time with you guys. Like I said, if we were sitting having coffee right now, I'd have the same exact information. You just have to probably just mic me. Talking the whole time.
Yeah, it's really so much fun to get a chance to talk to our close friends and have these great conversations. So will you come back again another time, Natasha?
Anytime. Oh my God, I'm still waiting to make time to go to Mount Shasta.
I know.
So I can go and do my magical tour and do the crystal shops with you. And
we'll do it. It'll happen. It'll all come together. Yeah. Mount Shasta will call us and we'll be headed down there for sure. All right, everybody. in everywhere that you listen to podcasts, not just UK Health Radio Land. Until we see you again next week, be safe and be well. And we'll be back with some more informational and weird conversations. See you next week, Bill.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, you guys. It's such a good time.
Thanks for being here with us on the New Life Perspective radio show. For more information or to find out more about the work that Bill and I do, please visit us at cognomovement.com or email us at info@cognomovement.com. See you again soon.